Hey everybody, it's Brian Kenny. Welcome to MLB Now. The MLB Draft is on Wednesday. Our draft coverage on MLB Network begins Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern. Joining us right now is a big part of our coverage for that day, former GM of the Colorado Rockies, our good friend Dan O'Dowd. How are you, Dan?
BK, good. Good to talk to you again.
And I've missed you. It's good to see you
Me
again.
too.
Um,
Absolutely.
we usually get to see each other and talk all the time, baseball otherwise, but here we go. First, let's start with this. Obviously, a very different draft. What stands out? 5 rounds. What stands out to you with the way things shook out this year?
Well, first of all, BK, for me, it's an exceptionally deep, talented draft. Painful to see some of the high school kids that are going to end up either in junior college or college just because of lack of looks and information, but encouraging that it's that deep of a draft. Big picture, multi-years from now, concerning is like, how is baseball going to make up for the lack of talent that's going to come in to all 30 teams this year? No doubt there'll be big leaguers that come in post 5 rounds. I'm just not sure they're going to be of the same caliber that we've seen in the past. And two, from an individual team perspective, I would say the biggest challenge is incomplete information. You know, you go out to watch players leading up to like crescendo of every time you file a report. When you first look at a player, you group him into the category you feel he will go. The second group of player identifies some question. The third time you see him, you get the questions answered. Reality is probably after the first time you saw him, that's the last time you saw him. So it creates such a unique set of circumstances that has really never existed before in the game.
So when's the last time even the top kids, were they playing baseball like January, February? Like, was there any looks, or is it because for most players, it's a lost spring, right?
College players, they got in about 20 games, but usually those first 20 games of a collegiate season aren't against the elite level of talent that they're going to face within their individual conferences. So you get a little bit of a funny read, but some questions asked. High school, warmer weather, Texas, California, Florida, you got in somewhat of a semblance of a much shorter look. Anywhere else in the country, BK, you got in absolutely no look whatsoever. So it creates a set of dynamics that are quite unusual. I will say is that because of the lessened number of players that you are having to prep out, you're going to probably do a little bit more of an in-depth analysis on every single player. So I do think they're going to get the talent right, but the other 50% of the equation, which for me, as I call, as you know, the human analytical part of the game, I think they're going to have a very, very difficult time measuring accurately that part of the equation.
Yeah, I want to ask you that. Would you change? Do you think some tactics might change? This is a very inside baseball-y thing, but that you might go more tools or readings, since you have not seen, basically, especially a high school kid, you have not seen that kid at all. You haven't seen, you don't know if he's developed, you don't know if he's grown, or well, you've known that, but you don't know how that works. Do you think it might change?
You know, yeah. Well, for me, it would, Brian. I'd be very conservative, my approach this year. I'd lend myself more to where I had more of the bulk of the information. The clubs that rely on data for their decision-making process, and a lot do, I'd be very cautious. You know, data can change, especially with high school players and even with college players. The maturation of growth physically changes one year so dramatically from the other year. But I also be very concerned about where that data is coming from and has it been filtered and how accurate is it? So I think the clubs that have relied a little bit more on the instinctive intelligence aspect of scouting would, in my mind, have a more competitive advantage going into this year's draft, because, you know, the experience looks of seeing kids should amount to something versus the clubs that really, really rely on the data, the spin rates, the exit velocities, the growth in those areas. I'd be very cautious about the quality and the quantity of the information that's coming in along those lines.
Yeah, Dan, I don't want to assume things because we all have a tendency to, and I'm assuming stakes are higher, but the investment doesn't seem as big. So, but are the stakes higher that hey, we got 5 shots at this, we're going to have 5 players, that's it. Are the stakes higher then to hit on those, or because of it's not the same investment? Yeah, not so much.
BK, great question. Reality, the first 5 rounds are the same investment as it was a year ago. It's just paid out dramatically different. Each kid is going to get the same amount this year as which $100,000. I would say the pressure is on you more to not swing and miss at any of the kids that you're taking this year, whether the Yankees are picking 3 kids. The San Francisco Giants have 7 kids in those 5 rounds. I don't think you can swing and miss at anybody. I think you have to get big leaguers to some capacity, whether they're impact player contributors or value players for depth. If you're a rebuilding team, you really have to do well to create a foundation to have success in the future. If you're a contending team, your only chance of sustainability is that, you've got to have players coming through your system. And BK, that's what makes what's fascinating after the 5th round, because it's a free-for-all. It's a wild west. Anybody can sign with anybody. It's $20K. You can't offer anything different. So the clubs are going to be actually in a collegiate kind of recruiting pitch, trying to get those post 5-round players to sign with you. And there's going to be big leaguers come out of all of those kids, simply because you're going to have players come out of those rounds just because of need, supply and demand. And clubs are going to have to go from drafting players and immediately switching, putting on a different hat and recruiting players to come into their organization.
Like, I don't know, like 1910 style, right? Going out
it
to
is.
The farm
it's before they had the draft. It's before they had the draft in the 60s. That's exactly how it happened.
Bringing them in, except now, if the money is the same, can anybody beat this system? Are there ways, because if teams are going to try, of like saying, hey, we can incentivize you this way instead of giving you money? Can that happen or not happen?
Well, it's not supposed to happen in light of what's taken place in our game with the Braves and their situation, and the Astros that we just took place. I can't imagine anybody's not going to abide by the rules. So ultimately,
but within the rules. Yeah, within the rules.
No, everybody's can offer only the same thing. You can offer a kid a full college scholarship plan, which is really advantageous, because the thing people have to keep in mind, when a kid is getting a scholarship to go to play baseball in college, it's never 100% BK unless there's some academic layer of it. From a pure baseball standpoint, 50-60% is usually the max that each child gets. So the parent is still absorbing a significant amount of cost to send their child to play collegiate baseball. So professional baseball can offer all of that. Every club can offer the same thing, but only a $20,000 signing bonus. So it really comes down to each club presenting the development opportunity to each player, and who separates himself and the ability to do that will ultimately end up with the player.
That's interesting. You're right. There's separation there with some teams with the way they'll do it. I want to throw in as well, like the human factor of this. I just can't imagine. And we all know there's more important things going on between the virus and over 100,000 dead and the protests and everything else. And yet you're going through this too, just like so many parents with kids, or kids who have come up, spent their whole lives playing baseball, and then the best have a chance to become either college players, professional players, and now that this spring is wiped out. Your son Jack is a high school senior coming out. Like what are your thoughts on that? On this, the lost spring, no graduations, or truncated graduations?
Yeah,
the whole thing.
BK1, from a bigger perspective, I think it teaches kids great life lessons as it relates to controlling only the things you control, because most of life is out of your control, and the only way you can respond to it is by an individual. But number 2, from a parental standpoint, even a child standpoint, I mean, every child chases a dream. It may not just be professional baseball. It may be anything that they choose to aspire to be great in life. And when you see that evaporate because of situations totally out of your control, I mean, it's challenging as a parent, because ultimately all of us as parents want our kids to be able to chase the things that have been put on their hearts from a very young age. For Jack, it's been to be a professional baseball player. I mean, he's blessed to be able to go to Vanderbilt with an incredible opportunity, but who knows if the draft might have been a normal draft with the opportunities that may have been presented for him in light of, his ability. And ultimately that just got taken away from him because he didn't get a chance to play his senior year. But hopefully every child that goes through this, every parent goes through this, will understand that there's bigger things in life that are incredibly important to their child's development into a whole human being. And this is just one of those steps in the process of turning them into that.
All right. I just wanted to point that out, because obviously you're a former club executive. You've been on that side a lot. Now you're on the other side. And
Correct.
It's been,
I
really feel for the kids that coming in, that you work your whole life and then boom, no spring, and the draft is small, and the whole thing. The draft again is Wednesday, and today, 7 Eastern, Front Office Focus. You have a good lineup, Dan. I think you and Greg are doing the show. It's going to be Farhan Zaidi, Ben Cherington, Chaim Bloom, John Mazalek, John Daniels, Dayton Moore. That's terrific. Give me one quick thing that you want to ask these guys.
Yeah, when you listen to their answer on how they're going to approach the free agent part of this year's draft, the answer will be fascinating to you. It really was. And these guys were great. They were open. They were extremely transparent in their thoughts. They didn't hold anything back. And I think it'll be very entertaining for people to watch.
All right, again, Greg Amsinger, Dan O'Dowd. That's tonight, 7 Eastern on MLB Network, getting ready for the draft on Wednesday. Dan, I look forward to seeing you again. I miss you, and I'll see you soon.
Me too. In person, BK. We'll high five. No, we can't high five. We'll have to elbow bump.
From a distance, we can. Take care, Dan.
Bye-bye, BK.